Tonight, we dismantle one of the internet's most persistent brain myths together now. You have heard it in movies, speeches, and motivational posters everywhere already today. The claim sounds simple. Humans only use 10% of the brain plainly. It feels empowering because hidden potential is an irresistible idea for everyone online. But science says the story is not just wrong, it is upside down. Your brain stays active all day, even while you rest and sleep nightly. Different regions switch tasks, but none sit idle waiting for permission each day. If 90% were unused, injuries would not look so devastating after trauma. Brain scans show activity across networks supporting movement, memory, emotion, and vision now. The myth survives because it sounds dramatic, mysterious, and easy to remember vividly. Pop culture kept repeating it until repetition began masquerading as truth online still. Soon, every fake genius story needed that 10% hook everywhere too, sadly. A superhero, a psychic, or a miracle student all fit the script perfectly. But catchy fiction is not the same thing as actual neuroscience at all. Real brains are not warehouses of unused space sitting quietly nearby, ever, truly. They are busy living systems, constantly balancing signals and chemicals daily instead carefully. Even simple actions recruit many regions at once throughout your head daily, constantly. Speaking, reading, and breathing all depend on widespread cooperation everywhere daily now. The 10% myth flatters us by promising secret reserves inside today. Yet evolution does not build wasteful organs that large for no reason. 21. William James said we use only a small part of our potential. He was talking about human abilities, not silent brain tissue itself there. That nuance vanished as the quote traveled through popular culture quickly, widely. Writers transformed possibility into literal biology, and the myth was born there. Then self-help gurus grabbed it and poured lime green pseudoscience over everything everywhere. They sold brain pills, instant genius systems, and confidence through exaggeration online. Their message was seductive. You are underpowered, but a product can fix that. The more dramatic the claim, the easier it spread everywhere online fast. Nobody wanted a boring truth about complex networks and ordinary effort alone. They wanted a hidden key, a secret door, a lightning bolt instead. So the lie became a brand, wrapped in hope and urgency quickly. It promised transformation without study, practice, or patience from anyone else ever. That is why the myth still appears in ads and clickbait daily. And that is why busting it matters so much today, here too. Understanding your brain correctly makes learning smarter and safer for you overall. It also protects you from gimmicks disguised as enlightenment and insight online. The truth is not that most of your brain sleeps at all. The truth is that your brain is always working in coordinated patterns. Next, we will trace how that misunderstood idea spread everywhere fast online. Then we will show what modern neuroscience actually reveals about brains clearly. Another misunderstanding emerged from the earliest attempts to map the brain. Researchers wanted to discover which regions controlled different behaviors and abilities. Their tools were impressive for the time, but extremely limited. Early experiments involved stimulating exposed brains with tiny electrical signals. Some areas triggered movements immediately when electricity touched them directly. Certain regions produced speech, sensations, or obvious physical reactions instantly. But many locations seemed strangely quiet during these simple tests. Those regions became known as the mysterious, silent cortex areas. Scientists assumed silence meant those parts probably lacked important functions. It seemed reasonable based on the evidence available then. However, the brain was hiding far more complicated processes. Complex thinking leaves fewer obvious clues than moving an arm. Planning and imagination cannot be observed with simple stimulation. Memory formation also produces effects difficult to recognize immediately. Decision-making involves distributed systems working together quietly. Emotional regulation depends on networks instead of isolated switches. Early instruments simply could not reveal those subtle activities. Scientists were observing with flashlights inside a vast city. Entire neighborhoods stayed active outside the flashlight beam. Silence in experiments did not mean actual inactivity. Instead, researchers were asking the wrong kinds of questions. The methods favored movement over invisible mental processes. Thinking itself rarely announces its presence dramatically. Much of cognition happens beneath conscious awareness continuously. Automatic systems support behavior without demanding constant attention. The supposedly silent cortex was performing demanding background work. Language, creativity, and judgment require widespread coordination. None of those abilities rely on a single switch. Brain functions emerge from interactions between many specialized regions. That insight arrived decades after those original experiments. New technologies eventually transformed our understanding completely. Suddenly, hidden activity became visible for the first time. Scientists realized the quiet zones were never empty. They had been observing only a fraction of reality. The silent cortex misunderstanding strengthened the 10% myth. Unfortunately, that interpretation spread faster than corrections. The myth gained credibility from misunderstood scientific observations, but better evidence eventually overturned those assumptions completely. Modern neuroscience revealed a far busier brain than imagined. Next, brain imaging would finally expose the truth directly. Another powerful argument comes directly from evolution and energy economics. Brains are astonishingly expensive organs from a biological perspective. Every living creature must carefully manage limited energy resources. Evolution favors efficiency because wasted energy reduces survival chances. Unnecessary structures usually disappear across countless generations naturally. Yet the human brain consumes enormous amounts of fuel daily. Despite representing little body mass, it demands tremendous energy. Roughly 20% of your calories support brain activity. That number surprises many people hearing it initially. The brain behaves like an energy-hungry supercomputer constantly. Maintaining neurons requires constant supplies of oxygen and glucose. Even during sleep, the energy demand remains remarkably high. Quiet moments never mean the brain completely powers down. Therefore, 90% inactivity would be biologically absurd. Evolution does not reward expensive organs doing nothing useful. Natural selection removes costly baggage whenever possible. Carrying useless tissue would create unnecessary survival disadvantages. Food shortages historically punished inefficient bodies harshly. Every calorie mattered throughout most human history. Wasteful anatomy would have imposed severe evolutionary penalties. Imagine buying a sports car with 90% missing engines. Nobody would design such an inefficient machine intentionally. Nature is even less forgiving than engineers. Biological systems are shaped by relentless selective pressures. The brain evolved because its functions improved survival dramatically. Memory, planning, and communication offered enormous advantages. Those abilities justified the heavy energetic investment required. Evolutionary trade-offs demand benefits greater than costs. A mostly useless brain could never satisfy that equation. The numbers simply fail under scientific scrutiny. Energy consumption itself becomes evidence against the myth. Active tissue demands fuel because active tissue performs work. Idle tissue would not justify such massive expenses. The body's budget leaves little room for waste. Your metabolism reflects millions of years of optimization. That optimization contradicts the 10% story completely. Biology tells a very different and more fascinating story. Every region contributes something valuable to survival. The evidence keeps pointing toward widespread activity everywhere. Next, brain injuries reveal why no region is truly expendable. Even tiny strokes can change speech, movement, vision, or memory almost immediately forever. That alone destroys the fantasy of 90% unused tissue entirely quickly. If a region were truly useless, losing it would barely matter afterward. But real patients reveal the opposite within minutes after damage occurs here. A stroke can erase language, balance, or facial control with shocking precision. Brain anatomy is highly specialized, not randomly overbuilt spare parts ever either. Different lobes handle distinct tasks, and damage reveals those responsibilities instantly, everywhere clearly. You cannot remove 90% of a piano and still play music. The brain is less forgiving than any musical instrument you can imagine today. Cut the wrong wire, and the whole network breaks fast down now. Many brain regions work like linked neighborhoods, not isolated machines at all here. Remove one street, and traffic snarls across the city immediately everywhere fast. Damage to one node can disrupt faraway functions through connected circuits too easily. That is why minor injuries sometimes look catastrophically huge clinically fast. The scalp may heal, while the brain itself struggles with invisible loss afterward. Patients may walk, speak, and think, yet still lose critical abilities permanently. A small lesion in the wrong place can devastate daily life completely suddenly. That is not spare capacity. That is essential infrastructure, holding everything together. Think of it as a library where every book has a job there. Remove random shelves, and the entire building becomes harder to use quickly. Brain tissue works the same way, only far more intricately wired together always. A weak signal in one spot can silence entire abilities elsewhere sometimes. Modern imaging shows damage rippling through networks, not just holes in isolation sometimes. The brain does not respect our desire for simple maps at all. It is organized for function, speed, and survival under pressure always. That design makes tiny losses far more consequential than people expect. Even so-called silent regions support attention, prediction, and internal monitoring behind consciousness constantly. They are silent only to crude testing methods, not to life itself. Once technology improved, those hidden functions became obvious immediately to everyone watching closely. That overturned the old silence equals uselessness assumption completely forever for us. A stroke teaches this lesson in the cruelest possible language of biology. One blocked vessel can starve neurons within minutes, sometimes less than that. When neurons lose oxygen, information processing collapses brutally across circuits almost instantly then. Movement, speech, and awareness can vanish at once without warning, sometimes totally. That is what damaged brain tissue actually looks like in real life today. It is not a minor inconvenience. It is a catastrophe instead often. The missing tissue was never decorative, optional, or waiting unused inside you. It was part of the machinery from the start, always there. Next, we will connect this damage evidence to brain imaging and explain why. That science leaves no room for 10% fantasies anymore at all. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change by forming new connections constantly daily. Every time you learn, practice, or repeat, synapses strengthen and reorganize together slightly. That is not unlocking empty space. It is building better networks inside you. Your brain grows efficiency through repetition, attention, and disciplined effort over time steadily. New learning creates chalky cayenne connections, then stabilizes them with pale yellow fire. Unused brain tissue is not waiting for activation like a dormant battery. Instead, learning changes which circuits cooperate, fire, and synchronize better over time. That is how skills become faster, smoother, and more automatic with practice. Repetition does not reveal hidden reserve. It rewires useful pathways instead gradually. That rewiring is visible in studies of people mastering new tasks daily. The strongest brains are not the fullest, but the most adaptable ones. Neurons that fire together can wire together with repeated experience over time. Those wires are not hidden capacity. They are newly useful structure for survival. Practice turns awkward effort into automatic skill through repeated calibration inside circuits. What felt impossible yesterday becomes easier because pathways have changed slightly already. This is progress, not secret power, and it is beautiful in practice. Unlocking potential means using your brain more skillfully, not more magically at all. It means training attention, memory, judgment, and emotional control intentionally through daily practice. It means building habits that make thinking clearer and decisions stronger over time. It means giving your existing networks better tools and better practice every day. The brain is not a warehouse of hidden rooms waiting idly inside unused. It is a living network constantly reshaping itself through experience and learning daily. That reshaping happens through synapses, pruning, and strengthened communication pathways every day continually. Learning leaves traces, and those traces become future strengths for you later onward. A child practicing language builds circuits that support fluent speech later naturally, too. A musician rehearsing reshapes timing networks, not spare brain reserves lying around unused. A student solving problems strengthens reasoning pathways through repeated challenge and feedback daily. That is why difficult learning feels hard before it feels easy eventually. Discomfort often signals growth, not failure in a changing brain under pressure. That means persistence matters because plasticity rewards repetition over time most strongly. Potential is not uncovered, it is cultivated through action every day directly. The brain changes when you challenge it consistently and kindly over time. That is the real meaning of unlocking human potential today for us. Not discovering a secret compartment, but building a better brain through learning. Every new connection is evidence that your future can expand further still. That is hopeful because effort creates change you can actually feel daily. You are not broken, and your brain is not capped at all. It is trainable, adaptable, and responsive to what you do repeatedly here. So the real goal is not more brain, but more use of it. And that is how ordinary people build extraordinary lives, starting now today together.